Hey guys, Brian Delivers You the Goods here, returning to you again for another album review tonight for Caskets, his new record, The Only Heaven You'll Know. So I'm going to discuss what I listened to for the 11 tracks on this newly released album for November 7th and let you know my thoughts on Caskets, his new record, The Only Heaven You'll Know, in its entirety of almost a 42-minute runtime. So let's dive into this album review tonight. Now it starts with Lost in the Violence, which is a very strong track, by the way. I enjoyed Matthew Flood's screaming and singing moments in this track, and this track did perform very well, so I was really impressed by this one. So 5 out of 5 goes to the opening track. It's a very strong track and definitely worth listening to when you hear it at midnight tonight. Our Remedy featuring Make Them Suffer. I think this one was solid. Would I say it was one of my favorites? It's pretty good in its own way, but it has its moments where I'm just not really connecting with it too much. But I think Make Them Suffer did a solid job on their part of the song. And how Matthew Flood sings this track, it's hit or miss. And Alex's singing from Make Them Suffer did pretty good for the most part, so this track was a little more melodic than I thought, but it's not terrible in any way, so 4.75 out of 5. The title track, The Only Heaven You'll Know, is the third song on the record, and it's overall another solid one, too. Didn't really care for it too much, but I think it's alright for how it sounds with Matthew Flood singing and some screaming moments, but it does progress and get better, the record, as you keep going. So it's a 4.75 out of 5 for The Only Heaven You'll Know. It's a solid track, but not one of my go-to favorite songs on this record. Closure was a really strong track. I really enjoyed this, and I know they dropped it as a single, but it's overall very good. Matthew Flood's screaming and his singing is very strong in this, and overall, the execution of the melody and production of this track did very well, so definitely rocks for sure. Highly favorable track that I really enjoyed. 5 out of 5 goes to Closure. Sacrifice did start off pretty slow, but it does pick up as you keep going, and it sounds pretty strong in its own way. So it's another great song, and for almost 4 minutes you're in for something interesting of a track. It does have melodic vocals from Matthew Flood from time to time, but his scream moments are pretty epic in this track, so I really like that aspect of the track. 5 out of 5. What Have I Become was a really good one that I enjoyed. The pretty much about the halfway point of the record is where it gets even better, and the tracks are more memorable, and this track was very memorable for sure. The catchiness of the chorus, like I said, the chorus is very catchy, and it is a highlight to this song. And the verses are pretty solid too, so really enjoyed this. 5 out of 5 goes to What Have I Become by Caskets. Make Me a Martyr, I meant to say, is another one I enjoyed off this record. It's going to get a 5 out of 5. I like how Matthew Flood's singing is pretty solid in this. Sorry, my voice has been cracking lately. And overall, this track did well for the execution, so it's another 5 out of 5. I think the drumming is pretty good in this too, and so is the guitar work. So another solid track, 5 out of 5. Save Us was a pretty nice song, and did have some heavy moments during this track, and it did very well for the execution. So Matthew Flood's singing is very strong, and his screaming moments are pretty good too in this track, so it's another great song. It's a 5 out of 5. Then we get to Escape, and that one is another really good one that I enjoyed. I was really impressed by this one, and definitely a weird atmosphere, this track, but it does work for how it's executing. So Matthew Flood's singing in this is pretty melodic at times, and then has its heavy points where he does his scream moments, and some sing moments that sound pretty good. So 5 out of 5 goes to this one. In Vain is a really good one that I enjoyed. I really enjoyed Matthew Flood's screaming in this. It's pretty epic. Pretty epic, I meant to say, without my voice cracking for a second. um, I really enjoyed how he was screaming it and singing it regularly, and I enjoyed the flow of this track. It flowed very well, and it executed very well, so it's getting a 5 out of 5 for this one. And finally, Broken Path closes out this album, and in a pretty good way, for sure. I mean, the pre-chorus is a highlight. Very catchy pre-chorus, and going into the chorus does have its strong moments. And like I said, this record is their most melodic, but really strong metalcore records. Very much hits the core, hits you hits you to the core with this record, with how the emotions flow through this record of what it makes you feel and all that. But overall, Broken Path was a great closing track, and it did execute very well with Matthew Flood singing and screaming, and just how it sounds. It's a really nice track and great outro track. 5 out of 5. Overall, production, mixing, and execution wise, I think this long awaited studio album from Caskets was worth the wait. It is definitely a well received record that I enjoyed. Granted, I had a few critiques along the way with this record. Nothing extravagantly to where I hated this record. I really enjoyed this record for sure. It's definitely a strong record from Caskets, and a memorable one too, to really come back and listen to. It has some melodic stuff, it has some hard hitting stuff with the drumming and guitar work, and the screams from Matthew Flood are very good in this record. And overall, his regular singing is pretty strong too. The only two songs that were my least favorites were Our Remedy featuring Make Them Suffer and The Only Heaven You'll Know. Those were the only two tracks I had slight issues with, but nothing to the extent where I thought it was terrible. Everything else was very strong on this record. So if I were to give Caskets The Only Heaven You'll Know a score, I'm feeling a very good 9.5 out of 10. Really strong record. Definitely recommend you guys check this album out if you have not listened to it for the November 7th release. It is worth listening to, and it's a very enjoyable record. So, yeah. I really enjoyed. There's What Have I Become was probably my personal favorite track on this record. So was Broken Path and In Vain and other tracks like Closure, Sacrifice, Lost in the Violence. So there's quite a bit of great songs on this record. And then there's some songs that do play it a little safe, but do work. So it is a very melodic record and melodic rock metal album, but you're in for something interesting when you listen to it at midnight. So 9.5 out of 10 for Caskets. This new record, The Only Heaven You'll Know. I hope you enjoyed this album review tonight, and thank you guys so much for watching.